Welcome to another deep dive. Today, we're tackling a case that's captivated the public for decades. The Menendez brothers.
Yeah.
You probably remember the shockwaves this case sent through the media.
Oh, yeah.
Two young men from a wealthy family accused of brutally murdering their own parents in their Beverly Hills mansion.
Okay.
Was it cold-blooded murder driven by greed, or a desperate act fueled by years of alleged abuse?
It's a tough one.
Let's dive in.
What's fascinating about this case is that it throws us right into a moral and legal gray area.
Right.
There's a lot more to uncover than just the who and the what.
Yeah,
This deep dive is about understanding the why.
absolutely. We're starting with the crime itself, which took place on August 20th, 1989. José and Kitty Menendez, a powerful Hollywood executive, and his wife were found shot to death in their home.
Right.
Now, you might expect their sons, Lyle and Erik, to be overcome with grief, cooperating with the police.
Yeah.
But that's not exactly how things played out, did it?
Not at all. While the initial assumption was a mob hit,
Right.
José Menendez had his share of rivals after all.
Of course.
The brothers' behavior in the weeks following the murders quickly raised red flags.
Red flags is an understatement. They weren't exactly laying low. Instead, they went on a lavish spending spree. Luxury cars, designer clothes, Rolex watches, essentially living a life of extravagance funded by their inheritance.
Wow.
It's this jarring contrast that really throws a wrench into the investigation.
Exactly. The prosecution argued that this spending spree pointed to a clear motive:
Okay.
greed. They painted a picture of two entitled young men who saw their parents as obstacles to their own lavish lifestyle.
Right.
Remember, this was the late 80s.
Yeah.
The era of greed is good, and the prosecution played into that narrative effectively.
And it's hard to ignore that, right?
Yeah.
If they were truly afraid, why not go to the police?
Right.
Why the extravagant spending?
Yeah.
It seems like they were almost embracing the spotlight.
And that's precisely the point the prosecution hammered home during the trial. But remember, there's another side to this story.
Okay.
A twist that threw the whole case wide open.
Really?
And it's a claim that's much harder to unpack: abuse.
And that's where we start to see just how complicated this case really gets.
Yeah.
It's not a simple whodunit anymore.
No.
We're now going to unpack those abuse allegations, the defense's strategy, the public's reaction, and what this tells us about the evolving understanding of abuse at the time. Stay tuned. So the prosecution presented a pretty compelling case, right?
Yeah.
Built on greed and entitlement.
Right.
But during the second trial, and it's worth noting here, that the first trial ended in a mistrial
Oh, wow.
with the jury deadlocked.
Wow.
The defense threw a curveball.
Okay.
Allegations of horrific abuse.
Really?
This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about painting a picture of
Wow.
two young men driven to a desperate act.
And that's where things get really interesting from a legal strategy standpoint. Remember, this was the late 80s, early 90s. Public awareness about abuse, especially within wealthy families, wasn't what it is today.
Right.
The defense team took a huge risk putting forth this defense,
Yeah.
knowing it could backfire spectacularly.
And backfire how? What were the risks involved?
Well, for one, they were essentially admitting to the killings, but arguing it was justifiable homicide.
Okay.
Self-defense in this case.
Right.
On top of that, there was the very real possibility that the jury wouldn't buy it, that they'd see it as a desperate attempt to avoid the death penalty.
It's a risky move for sure.
Yeah.
So walk us through those allegations.
Yeah.
What exactly did Lyle and Erik claim happened?
During the trial, both brothers delivered emotional testimonies alleging years of physical, sexual, and emotional abuse at the hands of their father.
Wow, so they really didn't hold back.
They described José Menendez as a tyrannical figure, prone to violent outbursts, controlling every aspect of their lives. They claimed the abuse began at a young age and escalated over time.
And what about their mother, Kitty? Where did she fit into all of this?
The defense portrayed Kitty as both a victim of José's abuse and an enabler.
Okay.
They alleged that she was aware of the abuse, but out of fear or a misguided sense of loyalty, turned a blind eye to it.
Right, so she was complicit.
Right. Remember those testimonies we talked about?
Yes.
Some witnesses, people who knew the family personally, corroborated aspects of the brothers' stories,
Oh, really?
describing José as controlling and Kitty as emotionally unstable.
So you've got these allegations of abuse supported, at least to some extent, by outside witnesses. It's a pretty stark contrast to the prosecution's narrative of greed and entitlement.
Absolutely.
How did the public react to all of this?
The public was completely divided.
I bet.
The case became a media sensation, with everyone from legal experts to talk show hosts weighing in.
Right.
Some people believe the brothers arguing that the abuse, if true, provided a chilling context for the murders.
Right.
Others saw it as a cynical ploy, questioning why they didn't go to the police, or why they acted the way they did after the murders, if they were truly terrified.
It's that same question we keep coming back to, right?
Right.
The spending spree, the seemingly carefree attitude after such a violent crime.
Yeah.
It just doesn't quite line up with the image of two traumatized young men who acted out of desperation.
Exactly. And the prosecution seized on that discrepancy.
Yeah.
Arguing that the brothers' actions after the murders contradicted their claims of self-defense.
Right.
They pointed to the planned nature of the killings, the lack of any immediate threat, and the brothers' attempts to cover up their involvement as evidence of premeditation. It was a classic case of dueling narratives, with both sides presenting compelling arguments.
So we have a motive rooted in greed versus a motive rooted in self-preservation, a desperate act born out of years of alleged abuse. This case is really about trying to understand the weight of each side, isn't it?
Absolutely, and that's what made this case so captivating. It wasn't just about determining guilt or innocence. It was about grappling with uncomfortable truths about family dynamics, the lasting effects of trauma, and the limits of our legal system when it comes to understanding the complexities of human behavior.
It's a lot to unpack, that's for sure. And speaking of unpacking, we haven't even touched on the trial's verdict and the lasting impact this case has had on our culture.
Yeah.
But we'll get to that right after this quick break. So we've been unpacking a lot, from a shocking crime to conflicting motives.
Right.
So after all the twists and turns of this case, where did the jury ultimately land?
Well, in 1996, after a trial that captivated the nation, Lyle and Erik Menendez were both found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
So despite those explosive allegations of abuse, the jury ultimately sided with the prosecution's narrative of premeditated murder. But the story doesn't end there.
It doesn't.
This case has had a cultural impact that extends far beyond the courtroom.
Absolutely. The Menendez brothers' case became a media phenomenon.
Sparking debates about family dynamics, the nature of abuse, and the criminal justice system.
Right.
It's a story that has continued to resonate with audiences for decades. Inspiring documentaries, TV series, and countless articles and books.
And it makes you think, why this case?
Right.
What is it about the Menendez brothers that continues to fascinate us? We've seen other high-profile murder cases.
Right.
But this one seems to hold a unique grip on the public imagination.
I think it's the combination of wealth, privilege, and the shocking nature of the crime itself. These were two young men who seemingly had it all.
Right.
Money, status, opportunities.
Yeah.
And yet, they were accused of brutally murdering their own parents.
Right.
It's a story that challenges our perceptions of family, ambition, and the dark side of the American dream.
And we can't forget that lingering question of abuse.
Right.
Even though the jury didn't buy it as a justifiable defense.
Right.
The allegations force a national conversation about the prevalence of abuse, especially within seemingly perfect families.
It shined a light on a dark corner of society that was often ignored or swept under the rug.
Precisely. The Menendez brothers' case became a catalyst for greater awareness about domestic violence and the long-lasting effects of trauma. It forced people to confront uncomfortable truth about the families we think we know and the secrets that can fester behind closed doors.
And even today, new evidence and legal challenges continue to emerge.
Right.
Reminding us that this case, for all its notoriety, remains shrouded in a degree of mystery and ambiguity. It's a story with no easy answers, one that continues to spark debate and ignite our collective fascination with true crime.
The Menendez brothers' case reminds us that truth is often elusive and justice can be messy and complex. It's a story that stays with you long after the verdict is read, forcing us to confront our own assumptions about guilt, innocence, and the gray areas that exist between the two.
It's a story that has left an undeniable mark on our cultural landscape, a chilling reminder that sometimes the most shocking crimes hit closest to home. And on that note, we'll leave you to ponder the complexities of this case, a story of wealth, murder, and the enduring power of family secrets. Thanks for joining us for another deep dive.